Alright, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a look at the Atari VCS, which has not long since arrived with me after I bought it about 3 years ago on the Indiegogo campaign. So the reason I bought this originally was I thought it could find its own niche and offer quite a few indie games, mainly just that kind of thing that doesn't really require that much power. But I honestly thought that they could get a load of small developers on board. They could start selling the games. People would buy the consoles cheap enough, and it'd be a lot of fun. So another reason I bought it was for the joystick at the time, which they showed as having spinner functionality, so the actual joystick rotates. So like games like Tempest and Pong are easier to play here. You just spin it round instead of like left and right, like they would on the arcade machines and on the 2600 if you had the paddle controller. And they actually showed Tempest 4000, which was, I think at the time, an upcoming Tempest game, apparently running on this thing. But there's been a lot of controversy with this. Pretty much, I think it's a case of sort of bad communication from Atari, and them sort of not really knowing much about it when they launched it, other than having a few different renders and an idea. It was announced, the Indiegogo completed. We had a few updates over the course of, I think, like the first year, and then I think at one point it went really quiet. And then they announced that they were going to upgrade the chip inside from, I think it was an AMD Athlon at the time. And then with Ryzen launching, they decided to go with the Ryzen chip instead. More on that later. But that introduced another delay into the project, and then there was updates to do with the joystick and the design of the console and all this stuff, and more delays. And then obviously last year, 2020, with COVID, I think that's delayed them in the manufacturing side, which I'm not saying I don't believe it. I think it's entirely true, but I think it's something they could have avoided earlier on. Another part of the controversy is when this was being developed. I think they had a company, what was he called, Tin Giant or something like that, and the main guy there, I think he's called Rob Wyatt, who has done a number of things, and one of them notably is the original Xbox. He helped with the development of that. They got him in they got his company in to do a lot of the work, from what I believe, and it ended up that Rob had sort of left the company. Not Tin Giant, Atari. It left. It stopped working with Atari, and ended up taking them to court in the US over basically non-payment for the 6 months of work that he did. So it's not great when you see that after putting a lot of money down to something that could have been a really good product, and then you see that and you're like, oh, is this actually gonna be made? Am I going to get what I paid for? Because once the campaign was done, you couldn't get a refund on it at all. And I'm sure if Atari was going to scam us, we wouldn't be able to get a refund from them either. So today I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of it now that it's arrived. And I'll talk about it, we'll fire it up, I'll talk about the interface. And we'll start with the packaging. On the front, it just gives you a brief overview of what it is, and it has 4K HDMI Wi-Fi. It's nice, colourful packaging. It's a nice size, pretty good. On the side here, we've got the specifications for the thing, which I don't know why they've put on it, because who actually cares? Who's just buying a console? Over here, it gives you more of an overview of what it has, which they should have just left it at that, I think, instead of blasting people with technical jargon. On the back, it gives you, again, like a bit of an overview of what you should expect, I guess. What you can do with it, what it's capable of. This PC mode is an interesting part that we'll go into afterwards. And then we just take this sleeve off like that. We obviously have Asteroids inspired packaging there. It looks quite cool. And then we open the box, and inside this is where the console sits. And that. Got a padded lid and a quick start guide on the front. Nearly dropped the thing. Telling you roughly how to set it up, which I did follow just for the sake of it, even though I know what I'm doing, and it did work. Just checking. When you lift this layer out, which is kind of oddly shaped, because the console is taller at the back than it is, so they've sort of had it so that the packaging's designed so that it's sort of tilted. If anyone cares about packaging, then there you go. HDMI cable with many barcodes, QR codes, and then the power pack, which is in here, and that's it in the bottom. Again, it sort of sits in there at an angle. So the power pack that comes with it is this thing. Right. So this is my first sort of issue with it. Well, not that it's an external power pack, because it's quite common. Yeah, this is just like a laptop style power pack, 19 volts, 65 watts with barrel connector, standard, right? And then you like 3-leaf clover thing, but the cable that they supply in the box, they only supply the one type of cable in the box for the whole world. Why couldn't they have? Why? You spent all this money on the console, you've waited years, and then they send you it and they're like, oh, by the way, you'll need a cable if you're not in the US, otherwise you won't be able to use it. I'm like, right, okay, well, it's not that big of an issue for me, but someone else who, you know, maybe had a 2600 back in the day, isn't overly techie, and expects to just be able to get it and plug it in and it work. They're going to get a US power lead and just be told by Atari that, oh yeah, you'll have to get an adapter. The good thing is, it is the nice one with the earthing pin, and so you can use these passive adapters. Obviously, being a 65 watt power brick, you're not pulling a ton of current over it, so these cheaper adapters, as long as they have the proper metal earth prong there, are absolutely fine, if a bit stiff. Now, two things: they could have either had different regions for the consoles, as in they have different SKUs that have the different power cables in them, or they could have had a plug that comes with adapters that slide on, like many companies do, so that as part of the packaging there's an insert with like 4 different adapters in that covers all the different types of sockets in the world. That really, I was not impressed with that at all. Absolutely shocking for it to arrive after so long, and then they can't even be bothered to put in the right power cable. So onto the joystick. Again, it follows the same kind of packaging design. And inside, the joystick sort of sits at an angle like that, so that it fits correctly in the box, because they put a USB cable for charging it and powering it further on down inside, underneath it, padded on top, and a quick start that says press that, which is yeah, that's the Atari button on the controller, not on the console, to turn it on. And as you can tell, it takes a while. And then you can hold it to pair it with, and these are just Bluetooth, so you can use these with any device. And this is for toggling VCS mode or Xbox. I would think this is to toggle X input, so it gets recognised correctly by a lot of devices. Now then, issue with this. So yeah, that goes underneath in the box. Take that out. The only thing in there is the USB cable. There was no manuals, regulatory information or anything with the console or the joystick. The type of thing you don't usually read, but the type of thing they should be putting in the box anyway. I'm sure you're supposed to do it by law with any electronic product. It doesn't say, like, other than on the bottom of the joystick, if it's FCC approved or whatever. It just has the logo there, which is that enough? Don't know. Maybe there should be a health and safety booklet in the box. So it just doesn't feel quite finished. The packaging's really nice, but why isn't there any manuals? So the USB lead, though it is micro USB, has this notch on it. Yeah. So, and so does the joystick. So that you can only use this micro USB lead. Now, the USB lead isn't made by Atari like the console. Well, Atari don't make the console, but it's their thing. These controllers are made by a company called Power A, which are a third-party sort of peripheral manufacturer for all of the other consoles. You can buy loads of different controllers that they do. And I've seen on a Switch controller that my sister has, hers is the same. It's micro USB for charging, but it's notched, so you can't use anything but their cables. Now, that's just that's a disgusting move, to be fair. Why? So they want you to buy one of their cables that's got this little notch in it. I think what I'd be doing is knocking the notch out on the plastic on the controller and using any cable I want. You know, the other thing is the connector's recessed, so you'd either have to have a cable that's the same size on the plug, the moulding for the plug, or shave one down so that it fit. It's unnecessary. So this is I don't really have any issues with the console build quality, but this is terrible. So the whole thing rattles around. The joystick feels like crap, but not as bad as the original 2600, which was, from what I remember, quite stiff. This is quite loose, as you can probably hear. So if I just press that again. I don't know if you can see that, but the left and right movement when you shake it actually activates it. It's quite light. I think it just needs to be a bit. It's just rubber dome like normal buttons on a normal controller. I think it needs to be a bit more tactile. As you can see, when I move the joystick, it does light up this ring around, which is entirely unnecessary and probably cost a lot that they could have put into stiffening the membrane that it uses and other things. So as well as moving like that, you can twist the thing. Yeah, and then you've got a button and another button on the side which the user's back, but then there's also another button here that's back, and then there's a menu button, and then the Atari button. The size of it's great. I think it just needs tweaking. It's not. I've had this apart just out of curiosity and because I've seen reports online of people snapping the joysticks quite easily. And I've had it apart and I can see that the main sort of shaft down there is plastic. The whole thing's plastic all the way up. And this thing spins. This is an outer piece of plastic that sort of slots over the top of the centre column. And it's got a little chip in the end and a magnet on the top piece. And it's a Hall effect sensor, so that's how it judges when you're turning it, because the magnet's spinning on top of the sensor. And I thought, yeah, that's quite a good idea. But this whole thing's like, there's no bearing. It's just plastic against plastic, and there's a bit of like grease in there to help it, where the shaft should have been metal. It actually should have been, because in an update they released, I think maybe a year ago, they went through sort of the design of the joystick and were saying that they'd found in development that the plastic shaft sort of wasn't good enough or whatever, and that they'd agreed to replace it, or had replaced it with a metal variant. And well, they've arrived and they're not metal, and people are snapping them, and it's not out of sheer force. Literally, that column in the middle it's not solid, it's actually hollow, but the wall of it is only a millimetre thick. I've been in there and measured it. It's literally a millimetre. So imagine you're actually playing a game like you should be able to. You know, sometimes it gets quite heated, but the amount of torque you're putting on the joystick as you're playing it quite easily snap. And again, that's not being heavy-handed. That's using the controller and what you should be expecting of it. Obviously, if you threw it, I'd be quite happy for it to snap. If you launched it and it hit something, I'd be quite happy for it to snap, because you shouldn't be throwing it around. But when you're literally playing with it and it snaps, so I've been careful with it, and apparently when it was brought to Atari's attention, they've said, "We're as surprised as you," which I'm not sure how to take that, to be honest, but it is what it is. They are sending replacement controllers out to some people. I have asked for one because apparently it shouldn't be that loose. And some games just, you can't really play them, it doesn't quite work right. So we'll go on to the console. So this thing is quite nice. It's heavy, it's well balanced from a design point of view. It's matte black, and then inside the ridges it's glossy. You can see the profile there. That's why it's sort of sat at an angle in the box. It's sort of raised towards the back and indented here at the front. It's a nice Well, what the hell has happened there? Anyway, it's a nice bit of kit. 2 USB 3.1, I think it says in the box, on the front, nicely spaced. And then this front bezel, just like the 2600. I got the Onyx one because I'm not really a fan of wood grain, but the wood grain one does look good when I've seen pictures of people sort of getting them. And another thing I've heard people say is, oh, the front's scuffed. It's like really scratched up. And I'm like, have they not noticed there's a clear film on this? And there you go. There's no mention of it on the packaging. There's no mention of it in the instructions. There's no pull tab with with like a print on it that says pull here. Nothing. And they don't. I just don't understand, because it appears there's a Discord that there's a Discord server that they've set up for Atari VCS founders, meaning they want us to test their product. And I've seen loads of people say that the front's scuffed, and this is literally the clear plastic film that they're supposed to pull off, and I don't think people have noticed that, and I'm not blaming the people, because there's no way of knowing. Unless you've got the black one and you see the bubbles or like the edge of it, you're just not going to know. You're not going to see it on the wood grain. And some people just are not going to expect it, and it's like I can see now on this, you might not be able to see it on camera, but there are scuffs across the surface of this, and it's just the film that's over the top. So I'm not taking mine off just yet, but you know, it's just a little thing there that they could have helped themselves by putting a little tab on it. So yeah, it's well balanced, and I'm a bit surprised it actually arrived. I think it's vented in the bottom. Yeah, on the back you got 2 more USB 3.1s or whatever they said. HDMI, Ethernet, it should be gigabit. There's your power in. And then your power button. Not quite sure why the back is orange. Is that the same colour? Nearly. Yeah, alright, fine. I did think the buttons were red. One of these holes on the back here is an intake, one of them's an exhaust. I think that's the intake, that's the exhaust. Basically there's a heatsink, fan, and then a duct inside, and it's a low power Ryzen embedded chip, which is a dual core with hyper threading. So you get 2 cores, 4 threads. It's got Vega graphics on board, so it's technically an APU. I think it's more of an SoC, and then there's 8 gigs of DDR4. I think it's 2400 megahertz in the little laptop SODIMM. So that's like, well, it's not DDR2, but it's definitely that size. So there's 2 of them, and that's good because that means it's actually running in dual channel, which gives, well, double data rate over just having 1 stick, which you'd think is a logical move to definitely have 2 sticks if you're running DDR RAM. But a lot of laptop manufacturers these days, for some reason, it'll come with an 8 gig stick of DDR4, 3000, 2666 or whatever, 1 stick, instead of like two sticks of 4 gig or 2 sticks of 8 gig. They just come with the one stick. So you're not getting the most out of it, and especially with Ryzen laptops, but also even more now with Intel based laptops, because the integrated graphics are getting so much better that they're going to need that extra performance, because the system memory is shared with the graphics. So that was a good move on Atari's part, that they have gone with 2 sticks of 4 gig instead of one 8 gig stick, because that will definitely help the performance. So that's a good move there. I don't really have any issues with the console. It's a good package. I think the board's pretty well designed, other than the Wi-Fi antennas, which are so they expect you to take this apart. To one of the whole things is, oh yeah, you can take it apart and upgrade it, and there's some people that have put 32 gigs of RAM in it and like a 1 terabyte SSD, and I don't really see the point in 32 gigs of RAM, because I mean, this machine's just, it's not that it's underpowered, it's that it's built for a purpose, which is embedded stuff, and that usually is retail, point of sale equipment and industrial stuff. It just so happens to have graphics that are, pretty good, but it doesn't need 32 gigs of RAM. I think 8 gig, because the memory is shared, by default you get, I think it's 2 gigs of the memory is allocated to the graphics, which is, I think if it was 4 gig it'd be a lot better, but then you'd have less system memory. So 16 gig is probably the sweet spot to have, 4 gig dedicated for the VRAM, and then the rest being system memory, which will give you 12 gig. Running 2 sticks of 8 gig, 32 gig is just massive overkill. So it's got a little sort of M.2 Wi-Fi card and another M.2 slot for an SSD. It's not PCI Express wired though, it's only SATA wired, so you can only run SATA SSDs. Now the reason it's got that is you can put an SSD in there and use it with Atari OS, I think they're calling it, for extra game storage. You can use an external USB drive, hard drive, SSD. You can even use an NVMe SSD externally, because it'll have its own controller, over USB for game storage. Or you can use PC mode, but at the moment, as far as I know, you have to have it on an external drive. Because they won't let you boot directly to it, which is a little bit odd potentially. You can't just plug a drive in and it boots from it, even though it's literally a computer. Like, you boot it up, you can tell it's a computer. You can get into the UEFI settings, though they are passworded, and you can boot stuff like Linux ISOs and that, but they have to be secure boot signed, because secure boot's enabled. And just like the ability to boot from an internal M.2 straight into Windows. Some people might say, why would you put Windows on this thing? Because I've got a huge Steam library, and a lot of the indie games on Steam I'd like to be playing on this, because they would play and they'd be good in front of a TV. I could just have Windows boot up into big picture mode, and there we are. And then I can always boot to Atari OS to play the games off of their store, which, some of them are going to be exclusives. Anyway, so I mean, it seems like a pretty nice thing at the moment. There is a bit of an issue with the fan curve. It does get sort of quite erratic. I'll just power it on for you. I think they missed the trick with the front button. They could have had that touch sensitive to turn it on rather than a button. They might have saved some money. Don't know. Here we go. So that's the noise it makes on boot every time. And then the fan's running. And it's pretty quiet when, obviously it's sat there. It's quieter than the PS5, definitely, just when it's idling. But overall, it ramps up a lot for some reason. And they've said they're working on it, but come on. Standard sort of UEFI boot logo. And this is the boot animation. Alright, so I'll press the Atari button. And you can see how long it takes to pair. Not a great start. Oh, it's connected. I was just about to get the cable. So yeah, it takes a while to pair, as you saw. I don't know what this loading bar is at the top. It's not normally this slow. So this is the dashboard. These sort of 9 boxes will hold like your apps and your games. Kind of reminds me of on the Wii, where it had like the mini TV screens. And then you have to sort of go to the top, and then you can go over to games. And that will just show all your games. I'm not sure how it'll handle it if you have multiple pages. And if you go to apps, it's the same thing. Store, the layout changes, interestingly. But it looks quite good. So, featured, games, apps, well, that's it. There are some filters there at the top, which you have to press menu to get to. There we go. In system, you've got account, which I won't show you. General settings, network, devices and storage. So you can set your resolution, set the console name and the time before it sleeps, as well as the language, which there are a few at the moment to their credit. Controls, that'll give you a layout of the controller. I have no idea why all of the UI is just absolutely tiny, especially that bit. It's just, how are you supposed to read that when you sat at a TV like, what, 6 or 8 foot away? System updates, let's see. Right, I'm up to date on that. Factory reset options. Oh, nope. Network, you can do Wi-Fi or Ethernet. Devices, Bluetooth. You can pair a lot of controllers to this wirelessly. You can also use like the PS4, or I used my sister's Switch Pro controller, plugged into it, and that worked fine. And now I'm trying to go back and nothing's happening. Let's try that back button. Nope. Let's try that one. Nope. Yeah. It's not doing anything. Try turning it off. So it's off now. So the console actually has eMMC storage on board, 32 gigs of it, and that's what the Atari OS sort of resides in. And you know, based on the size of the games that are currently out, it's not too bad. Obviously, I've only got a few games on here at the moment, but you can either plug in USB, like I said, or the M.2 drive, which you have to take the thing apart to do. So we'll go on a VCS Vault. And this is literally the PC version. And I don't know why it's got a light on the top of the joystick. So that animation's gone completely, and we've just got a line on top of the joystick now. Okay. We'll go on Tempest, I'll show you the spin action. Again, it's like, what button do you press? I haven't got any of those. I haven't got a start button. Do press menu. And then you see that delay. Right, I'll try and play it. Oh. Oh yeah, it has vibration as well. Which is more audible than it is actual vibration. So I think they're sending different animations to the joystick now it's in-game, compared to just sort of just default. Try and show you that when it goes to the next level. Anyway, to get back to sort of the main menu, you press the Atari button, the screen goes black, then it takes you to this screen, then you go exit. And the controller's apparently still on that animation. Launch Chrome, and it literally launches Chrome. Literally just the desktop version of Chrome. And as far as I'm aware, you cannot do anything in here with a joystick, and it doesn't tell you to plug in a keyboard and mouse. It doesn't tell you what to do. VCS Companion is, well, it pairs to an app on your phone, which can give you the keyboard and mouse, like touchpad functionality. PC mode. Yep. But it doesn't tell you, like, oh, go to this address or scan this code to find out how to do it, which would be useful. What else? Let's see if there's anything free. Um, right. So now we're downloading an app. Yeah, there's weird things with the UI, like this download button's quite big, and then this text down here is absolutely tiny. There's no accessibility settings with scaling options or text sizes, font sizes, colorblind mode, anything like that. So if we go back, I don't know if this actually downloads in the background. It says that it is in that tiny UI up there. And then missile command is a good one, because this doesn't actually work wirelessly, unless they've updated it. Are you ready? Yes, I'm turning that left, and up is going left, down is left is going up. The fire button works. It's like the controls are inverted. Oh. But via when it's plugged in via USB, it works fine. It's a little bit too sensitive, but it works fine. I think I'm going to call it a day on this video. I think you get a gist of the current state of this. Hardware-wise, the console is really nice. The joystick is an absolute letdown. The build quality needs to be seriously improved, as well as that proprietary micro USB implementation. The packaging's nice. It needs instructions. The UI is tiny. They need to sort that out, make things bigger. So accessibility settings to allow people to change that. And I look forward to more games being ported to it. Well, not ported to it, but hopefully exclusive. And generally things working better than they are now, because it's just, we're expected to sort of test these things now. Having waited 3 years for the thing. Apparently I'm supposed to be a beta tester. I didn't sign up for that. Apparently we were told. I do not recall seeing that anywhere. So it is what it is. I was going to sell this thing, but apparently they're trying to make it easier to get into PC mode, so I'm just going to whack Windows on it and it'll become a media center / Steam box for those sort of low power games, because it's a nice bit of hardware. It really is. So thanks for watching. I hope you like the overview of this thing. How do we get to downloads now? Not sure. Yeah, hope you liked the video. Hopefully it was informative. I just try and say how it is. I mean, you can see for yourself as we're going through it and using it, it's not polished at all. So I'm hopeful though. I'm hopeful for the future of it. From what I can sort of gather with the Atari staff that are in the Discord, it seems like it's quite a small team. Whereas when you think of the Atari brand, you think it's quite a massive company. In reality, the company that owns the IP and the brand is quite a small team. One of the employees told me that they do have like different departments for things, but they do outsource a lot of things. So there's different companies. You can hear the fan there. Different companies looking after different elements of it. Hopefully it will be better for all the people that have bought it to use it for the OS. But until then, this is the current state of the Atari VCS. Thanks for watching.